Welcome to the first episode of this project, which is airport search in your city using iOS Swift, RxSwift, and MVVM coordinator pattern. So before beginning, let me just show you the API which we are going to use to fetch all the airports around your city. So this is actually something which is going to fetch you all the airports around the world. So this is my JSON. It's just a JSON file which is sitting somewhere in the server and it just returns you all the airports. It's with its code and country, location. So if I can just scroll down, it has so many records. So that's what we are going to launch a load for this project. So many records. It has like 70,000 plus records. So it's so much of record you can play with. So that's my request. Just to get request, nothing. It does not bother with headers and all that stuff. It's just an application JSON. So let's just start with by creating a fresh project for this. I'm gonna create that. I'm gonna create a single view application. Next, I'll just call that as airport search. Maybe city airport search. And I'm gonna keep that display name later. com.letscode easy dot airport search, city airport search, maybe city airport search, airport search. Maybe I'll just change the display name. I can do that later. City airport search. Create a new Swift project using Storyboard. Not going to use core data and all in this episode. Create that next. Go to iOS tutorials and don't add it to the repository and all. I'm just gonna create it. Created simple project. Oh, it's given me a bundle identifier. Maybe I can just correct that and just make it as city airport search. That's enough. Targeting iPhone, iPad. Maybe I'll just go for portrait mode. That's it. That's my project. Create that project. Let's just now start with the things we need. Create a layout first. Let's just go to the creating the first layout. So before that, maybe just I can add a pod instance for this. Let me go to my terminal. City. Where is this located? Let's start with basic pod installation itself. City search pod init. That'll create you a pod file. That's it. The pod file. Open that. I'm just gonna open it in the pod Cocoapod application, and then let me start adding things I need. Maybe I can grab it from something which I have already done. Pods which I'm using. First thing first, I need RxSwift in this project, so that's what I'm gonna add as the first thing. Pods which I need, RxSwift and RxCoco. Let's install that into this project. Yeah, that's done. So I have RxSwift and Coco installed along with the pods. So let me just close this and open my workspace. city airport search by workspace. That opens a application in the workspace which has this added pod right now. Pods RxCoco, RxRelay, and RxSwift. So relay is something which is newly added in their framework, where all the publish relay and behavior relay are gonna come through this RxRelay. So it's pretty simple there. So I have the new project created which has a scene delegate, app delegate, view controller, initial launcher view controller, the main storyboard. So let's just start with creating the storyboard layouts. So I already have the view controller associated with it. So I'm going to just replace or rename the existing view controllers to something as the first launching view controller, which I'm going to use, which I'm going to call it as Search Airports View Controller. So let's just rename that. Search Airports View Controller. That's it. Rename. Let's go check in this place. Okay, it also says Search Airports View Controller. So I'm going to use the storyboard identifier to instantiate the view controllers. So if you're not aware, or if you have been following my tutorials, I never use segue to set the navigation from one view controller to the other. I feel that just couples your view controllers, and then once you start creating multiple view controllers, you're going to have a nightmarish kind of a storyboard where each and everything will be interacting or navigating from one to the other using segue, and it's very difficult to actually decouple and demodularize things. So I'm going to just use plain decoupled architecture. So that's the reason I'm just creating a storyboard identifier to launch it through not a builder. Maybe, yes, there is a builder which I will have even in this one. So the builder, at least in this case, will be called as a coordinator, which is going to come up later. So I have the view controller right now. Let's do the layout for the first screen which I need. It's like nothing but a table view, which will also have a text field to search. Let's start adding things there. So let me just pick up a view first, because I need to have a rounded view at the top. So I'm just going to include a view here. Simple view, nothing as critical. It's just a view. And on top of it, I'm gonna add let me just set its constraints first: leading, trailing, top, and then maybe a height. That's it. $150 maybe. Yeah. Okay, so that's sorted. So let me add a color to that. The color that I'm going to use is a custom color. Let me just go to my existing project and then pick up that color. This is the custom color I'm going to use. I'm just going to apply it even here. I'm just keeping it as consistent as possible with the repository which is already there for it's available through my patron if you need access. So that's the color I'm going to use, a custom color. Even this one I'll be I'll be keeping it in a separate file later. Maybe I can just keep it as 0. I don't. This height maybe 120, because the top part is going to be the navigation side where applied color will be taken up. The custom color is applied. on top of it, I'm gonna add a text field. Text field. Custom font. Just gonna use font like where's my font? Okay, let me check. Okay, I'm just using Helvetica itself. 20 font. Maybe I can even increase the height of this. Okay. And placeholder text being search city. That's the placeholder. Maybe I need to set its constraint so that it takes up that height. Leading, trailing, top. Yeah, how it works. 60. And then this has to be, what's the leading? 8. Maybe we can keep that as 15. And the trailing 15. Pretty good. So that's my control. Maybe it can be 35. Yeah, so that I can just see some kind of a bottom background there. I mean the rounded corner. Let's now add a table view. Right there. Whole screen. Maybe I can give a slight spacing here. Vertical space. Leading, trailing, bottom space. That's it. So layouts for these two things are done. A view around, I'll just call this as a rounded view, a text field, and a table view. So let's add those things onto our view controller. Go there, call it as, what did I do? Rounded view, search text field, and the table view. Three things for this, three controls. So it's text field, table view, and the rounded view. Let's do that things. So we need to start including the dependencies now. So first thing is loading our search. As soon as you start searching, we need to call the API. So even before going to the API, let's start with the basic implementation of MVVM, where we need to send the signal to the view model, and then the view model can then start querying into a server. So let's start doing all that right now, first thing first. So basically what we need right now is a section for view models. So let's create groups for each thing. Let me call something called view, which has all the view elements like the view controllers and all the control cells and everything. Then I also need to have a group for view models. I'll just call it as view model. So for this view controller, let's create a corresponding view model. So I'm going to call it as so it makes sense that I rename this to search city view model, search cities view model or something. Because search city view model, because that's what this view controller is going to do. So it's giving me some kind of a problem. I'm just going to call it search city view model and then replace even here. Search city, done. Close, go back. I don't think it's starting from here. Let's compile and see if everything is fine or not. It's cool. So city view model. So we need a corresponding view controller for that. Let's create that. Search city view model, which is just representing the search city view controller. Go and create that. And I'm going to create it as a type of class. Search city view model. That's it. And I also need a representation protocol for it. So let me just create that as well. So whatever we will expose to, let's say any other section, will not be the search city view model class, but instead it will be the protocol instance, which will be, I'll just call it as search city view presentable. So this search city view model is going to implement that. And whatever is going to happen is my view controller is going to have an instance of that. Let me just call that as view model. But this is going to change a lot when you have the coordinators in place. So this is the beginning. Your view controller is going to have an instance, or it will be exposed through the protocol. The view model will be exposed through the protocol. So that's my view model. So now what is that we are going to do with this view controller? We have a search field. So whenever you are entering something to that text field, it's going to start populating your table view based on the search result that you have for that search text field, which are the cities. So you can do the implementation in a normal way using non-Rx way, where you implement all the delegates and then table view delegates, reload, all that you can do it. But this tutorial is gonna more focus on RxSwift version of it. But then it's not actually totally different from any approach that you're gonna do. Even you can do this in a non-Rx way. So it's not limited. This tutorial is not limiting you to just the RxSwift way of doing things. You can even replicate it in the non-Rx way. Maybe if you really require it, just ask me. I'll take it up as something where I can show you how to do it in the non-Rx way. But this one being in the Rx way, I'm going to start doing that. So I'm going to start including the things like dependencies which are needed. So table view is dependent on an Rx extension, which is from a community, and it is called Rx data sources. So I need to include that for using the table view. So I'm just including that and then installing for this project. Dependencies done, installed. So now I have Rx data sources as well. So it is also implementing something called as a differentiator along with it. That's also done. So I'm going to include that Rx data sources. Maybe I need to compile it once. Yeah, that's available now. So that's also done. RxSwift, Rx data source, and that's available. So let's just start building the data source required. So one of the things that we need is to send a signal from your ViewController to the ViewModel so that it can start doing the search operation. So for that, I'm gonna use an approach which I'm used to when I'm doing a Viper architecture. The same thing, like sending a signal from a ViewController to a presenter. A similar thing is what I'm gonna do even in this case where it is MVVM. So approach as such is applicable in both the cases. So whatever you will do is, if you have a property in your ViewController, let's say search text property, which will be of a driver type, you can directly use that to bind it with your text view. So instead I'm just going to do something different here so that I don't do the regular way. Just a deviation, nothing major here, but you can even do the other way where you can just bind it with a property if you are defined, and let's say your protocol, let's say something like where search text, which will be of type driver string. You'll just have it as a get or something. So for that you need to import RxCoco. So something like this, and this will become your bindable property for your text view. So similar thing, I'm just gonna use it in a tuple which I'm so used to right now, where I create it as an inputs and outputs here. So I'm just gonna use the same approach, tuples of inputs and outputs, so that I don't define each and every property here. Instead I'll keep it inside a tuple. I'm just gonna call it as input and type it as output. So something which is gonna go from your ViewController to the ViewModel will come under input, and whatever you need as a response from, let's say, a ViewModel to a ViewController will come through the outputs. That's a basic differentiation here. It's a pattern used recently in many projects where you define it as input and output for each layer. Even it just need not be between ViewController and ViewModel. It can be from between anything to anything. Input output model. So this is just a tuple, and then I can define a property for input of type input, because we are going to have many view models. I'm just gonna, because we don't have a framework yet, I'm just gonna keep it as presentable.input and output. Get. That's done. So it will ask you to implement these two things there. So we can just implement that. Input and output. And then I can just have an init here, which will accept an input from somewhere. That somewhere we will define later. We're just gonna have that init here. So it's gonna, this input is gonna come from somewhere. So that will happen when you are actually defining those coordinators. So until then, let's keep the instances here. Like, so input is something which will be used to instantiate your search city view model, and it is going to set that input. Self.input is input, and then output, I'm gonna create an extension for this search view model and make it private. Create a function called output, and it accepts an input. Maybe, let's see, I'm just gonna keep that input it might use that input to create an output. I'm just assuming it's going to do that. Just going to keep it as this. Pass an input to this output function. I'm going to keep it as static function, and then it just returns you. Right now the output is this format. It's just an empty, so I'm just passing it as an empty. So once you start adding something to output, then we start returning it through this function. So this should be okay right now. Maybe I can just call the output as well to the function here which we are defined. Output, pass the input. That's done. So instantiation of ViewController is done. Now let's define the input which we are going to use. So I'm expecting a text search text to come through this input, which is going to be a driver string. So whatever I had defined as a property within this presentable, I'm going to keep it as a tuple within a tuple value. So it cannot have a single value, so I'm just keeping one empty here until we have a second value. So that tuple is defined. So now it's going to ask me to have so it's just an input. We are not used it anywhere, so it's not going to give me an error because this input is not returning any output here. So that's done. So what did we define here? We have the view model, we have the instance of ViewController, view model in the ViewController, but it's not here instantiated anywhere. So we are at a stage where we can start doing that. So for that, let me include the first thing. Maybe the first thing, it's time to make that first break here, maybe, because we will be introducing some what is called as a coordinator at that point. Or yes, so let's take that first break where we have defined the view model here, instances, how it's going to get created, and we have the ViewController, and then let's take that break right away. And then with the second episode, I can show you how a coordinator is gonna bring these two components together. So let's take a break for the second episode right now.